Hi, this is Matt Mason from BitTorrent. We're here at the Driscoll Hotel for South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. We're here with Tim Ferriss, who some of you might know we did a feature content collaboration with end of last year, end of 2012. It was a fantastic success. We wanted to sit down with Tim today and talk about what the hell happened, how did this work, and how do you apply distributed technology and distributed thinking to book distribution and author visibility in the digital age. Tim, thanks for sitting down with us.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So what happened?
What happened?
You called us one day.
I did.
How did we get there? Let's start there.
Yellow Pages. No, that's not how it happened. I have a very good friend named Ryan Holiday who at something like 21 or 22 became the director of marketing at American Apparel. So he's wise beyond his years.
Beyond his years.
And
yeah.
You know Ryan.
I know Ryan well. Very smart.
I had enlisted him to help with the launch of the 4-Hour Chef because it was a very new adventure for me in so much as it represented the first major book out of Amazon Publishing, and as a result faced a few huge advantages on the Amazon platform, but also a number of handicaps because it was being boycotted by Barnes & Noble, for instance.
So just so our viewers get it, so what does that mean, doing a deal with Amazon, and why would that upset somebody like Barnes & Noble?
Well, there are companies that think competition makes them stronger, than there are companies that dislike competition. And I think there's a lot of fear-based decision-making in the book industry because of the trend towards digital, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it's not something that can be reversed. So there are companies, world-class technology companies like Amazon, which are embracing and helping to push that forward.
Yeah.
And then there are the members of the resistance. And so the resistance, including Barnes & Noble, don't really like Amazon, although they do have the Nook. Certainly they view Amazon as a competitor and do not look for sort of cooperation in any capacity. As a result, I really had to look at novel ways to not only promote the book online, but sell the book online and increase the numbers as best that I could. And of course, the biggest constraint that I have personally is my own time. And so I asked Ryan, well, where could I get the maximal impact for sort of minimal input? And he's like, you need to talk to BitTorrent. And that's how the call came about.
So what did you think when Ryan first said BitTorrent? Tell me, what was the thing that went through your head then? And what do you think now that you've done it?
I was actually not hard to convince because I also know a few people from different outfits in Hollywood who had used BitTorrent for musicians, some big artists in their portfolios, and I wasn't afraid of BitTorrent. And I think that I viewed it as a distribution mechanism, and there are many things and many ways that you can distribute something through a megaphone to 170 million plus people potentially, right? And my big question was, and it wasn't a fear, I was like, well, what's really going to happen? Like when I put this up, how is it going to convert? How do I measure that? And I guess we could jump forward to kind of the snapshot of some of the results, which, as you know, it was downloaded more than 2 million times. And the book hit every bestseller list pretty much imaginable, including #1 Wall Street Journal, and sold, I think, almost 40,000 digital just in the first basically week, not even the entire week. And it's still going at this point, which has been really fascinating to see. So the residual ongoing push. And the click-through rate, I don't want to get this wrong, maybe we can double check this, but I just remember the click-through percentage from the BitTorrent landing page that you guys designed to the Amazon page was higher than anything I've ever seen. I mean,
it was crazy. So I remember what we could see on our side and what we were seeing in the marketing department that week, and the results came in, and it was okay. So I think it was in the first, because we got 2 million downloads. I think to date, it's more than that even. And, it was 210,000 downloads in that first week. And then we were seeing through the links and the tracking from that page to the Amazon page, we were seeing something like 89,000.
Right.
And I remember calling you like, is something broken? Because this doesn't make any sense. That's like nearly a 50% conversion rate. It's like a 45% conversion rate. That doesn't make any sense.
I remember you double checking and me then asking you to triple check the numbers. I mean, they're by far the easiest promotion, I would say the easiest promotion that I did in the entire campaign, and the traffic that it drove was consistently either number 1 or number 2 to almost all the pages that I was able to track that mattered, like the 4 Hour Chef homepage and so on. And I just remember how quickly things moved, which was beautiful. I mean, it's helpful that we're both in Silicon Valley, but it was like phone call, okay, great, see you at the office, like what are you doing today, or whatever it was, and like meeting at the office, and then got all the assets to you through Dropbox, and it was like off to the races. And it was, I guess, 2.5 gigs or more than 2 gigs of extra content that I thought readers would find interesting, whether they were familiar with my stuff or not, or even non-readers, because there's a lot of video content, and I gave them the raw files to play with if they wanted to for the video and the audio, and then a lot of cut chapters and behind-the-scenes shots and making of edits and scans, as well as a lot of the book itself.
I think that's what I loved about the bundle you did with this, like someone who's had experience in the book industry, the fact that you put in raw docs with editor's notes scribbled on them, like as a fan of an author, like that's something that's so priceless and it's so hard to put anywhere else. And I love that we could put that in the bundle. It makes so much sense. And it's hard
to find, right? For authors that I love, there are some who are great at sharing. Neil Gaiman is an author have been a huge fan of for decades, because I was a comic book dork for ages. And to be able to see, let's say, his first draft versus his second draft with hand-edited notes, I effectively wanted to offer the bundle that I would want to see from my favorite authors. And it was fun. It was very, very easy. And in the end, I think it's very helpful to design not only your promotion and marketing of a book, but also the writing itself, to build it so it can be shared. And for instance, in the 4 Hour Body and then in the 4 Hour Chef, to make writing easier for me, but also to make the reading easier for my audience, it's really a collection of, say, 40 or 50 mini books. So I treat each of these chapters as an independent, like, mini treatise on a given subject. And then I have, let's just say hypothetically, 50 different verticals, each of which will love at least 20 to 40 pages of the book. And I don't aim to have readers love all of my books. I think that's actually how you end up making something so bland and in the middle ground that people end up indifferent. So I try to create a choose your own adventure buffet of different books that people can then choose from and dip in and dip out of. And I think that part of doing that effectively is, as you are creating the book, to track the process and to save scans of your edits. If you have some type of video diary where you're like down in the dumps, rather than hide that stuff, humanize yourself by sharing that. Because I think that online it's very easy, and certainly on more traditional media like television, to just show the highlights. And people are like, I could never do what that guy does. I could never do what Tim does, because all they see are the successes. But showing, let's say, some of the outtakes of the videos that I put in the bundle, for instance, where I was trying to cook something and I was unfolding newspaper to cook crab, and then the newspaper caught on fire. All of these like debacles are what humanize you, and ultimately what make people not just readers or fans, but ambassadors and proselytizers for the content you create, because they see everything that goes into it. And it's fun. It's fun to share that stuff too.
So Tim, the publishing world is changing faster than authors can document it. It's happening so fast. You always seem to be ahead of the curve when it comes to figuring out what's next and how to connect with readers and how to turn readers into evangelists. Putting it through the lens of BitTorrent, how do you turn readers into seeders? You're very good at getting people to share your content in ways that lots of content creators aren't comfortable with, but seems to really work for you, and really you seem to monetize it and make it work at every level.
I try to conduct as many low-cost experiments as I can. And then I take what works and I try to do it again, bigger and in a more scalable fashion. But a lot of it is throwing things at the wall and not being afraid to have many initiatives that fail. But as long as they're cheap and fast, I view that as feedback, and I think it's very helpful to go about it that way. So for instance, a few examples that worked. One was producing a very, very short 8-second book trailer So the 8-second book trailer, which was kind of half a joke. People can check it out. Don't mind the profanity if you do. 8-second book trailer, which was visually really stunning. I had an awesome motion graphics guy put it together on the East Coast. And then I used a startup that I'm not associated with, but I know the guys, a Finnish startup actually called Audio Draft. So it's kind of like 99 Designs for audio. And had my readers or anyone who wanted to submit soundtracks with sound effects for this video. And then had cash prizes and everything else. And I involved, in other words, my readers in developing not only the promotional content and different collateral and assets, but also the content of the book itself. So the marketing per se started 2-3 years ago when I polled my readers to ask them for the weaknesses of current books on learning, language learning systems in books, cookbooks, etc. In terms of turning people into seeders or even active promoters, another experiment that worked out quite well was using rally.org, which is effectively a crowdfunding site used by everyone from Bon Jovi to Barack Obama. You fill in the blank, and a lot of very large organizations or brands have used it. And what I am an investor with Rally, and what we were able to do was create a specific leaderboard that allowed people to create their own fundraising pages. But the fundraising pages were actually book selling pages. So they would, for each book, get a certain credit, and there was a tally that kept track of the number of books they sold. And then all of the royalties were donated to donorschoose.org, which helps high-need public school classrooms and teachers around the US. So all of my money was going directly to Donors Choose, which allowed them to more effectively promote the book. And then we were able to keep track of all the top sellers or promoters, which you don't need money to accomplish. You just need to be resourceful, which I try to incorporate into all of my competitions. There's at least one element that doesn't require you to have a budget, basically. And in doing so, you just get your readers excited about this pending release, but you also involve them in actively creating this movement. And from what I can see, they really enjoy it if, and this is really important, if you listen to what they say and you take their feedback and recommendations seriously, which I do, because I learn more from my readers in any given week than I've taught all of my readers to date in the last 7 years. So in a way, it's I very selfishly have a blog that I write because I get so much incredible feedback. If I want to know about animation, it's like boom, I'll hear back from 5 people at Pixar who are like, hey, let me check out this, and this. If I want to hear about race cars, I'll hear back from like one of the top rally racing teams in the world. Or I want to hear about programming. Well, of course, we're in Silicon Valley. So I view it as very much an even trade with my readers.
It sounds like to me, it sounds like you treat the way you approach writing a book and getting a book out there, it's a startup.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a startup. I mean, the 4-Hour Chef, for instance, you could look at it through the startup lens perfectly. And if you view, let's say, the advance as the seed funding, and then with that advance, building out a team. I mean, I had 30 to 40 people working on this book at any given time for about 1.5 years, and that included designers in the US, that included illustrators and cartoonists in Australia, that included recipe testers at 3 or 4 different altitudes and different humidity levels to make sure.
This sounds more Series A or B.
It was, this might be like a Series B. And it was extremely involved, maybe 12 photographers in different locations. Absolutely the startup. And even if you look at the tools that I used, right? So aside from BitTorrent, it was like Basecamp, Dropbox. I mean, all the tools that you would associate with Evernote, these tools you'd associate with startup culture or startup business ops, I used in the creation of this book. Absolutely, very, very much modeled after successful companies that I'm working with already, which thankfully worked out. So
you're the smartest guy doing this, pretty much, on the planet.
I've made a lot of mistakes in a very narrow area.
And that's why you're the smartest guy doing this, right? But so, and I hear this from agents, I hear this from people in the book, non-fiction is going to be fine because you guys can do speaking gigs and you can go and do a bunch of other things, and you can. What about we were talking off camera about narrative and about the storyteller. Like, how do you do this if you're in fiction?
If you're in fiction, I think that there are many analogs to what successful authors do in nonfiction, and in fact, if you look at the genres that do best, whether it's on Amazon or at retail, the books that really sort of move heaven and earth when they hit are almost all fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, 2012, I believe it was something like 20 to 25% of all books sold in the US at retail were 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, an astronomical number. There's no nonfiction book that will match that.
Yeah.
And what that provides is, from the standpoint of storytelling, is the ability to include all the stuff that didn't make it in, because there are just as many excerpts, just as many things that were cut, just as many characters that didn't make it in, as there are the outtakes and bonuses that I provided in the nonfiction. The benefit that I think fiction has is intrinsically it's focused on story arc. So you can use whether improved distribution through BitTorrent or other types of promotion to really push into other types of adaptations and uses of that material, whereas nonfiction is much more constrained. Very few movies are made from nonfiction books. Very, very few. And I think the same approach to focusing on niche populations for specific aspects or portions of the book applies. You're not going to necessarily approach Lifehacker, but you might approach any number of 100 other sites that are focused on whether it's entertainment or even specific types of, let's just say, context within a given book, right? So I think that they're very parallel, and I can't wait to see an accomplished fiction writer take their tools and bring them into the world that I already am very comfortable with, including BitTorrent, because I think it could really outshine and outpace everything that I've done quite easily if it's positioned the right way. So I'll be watching very closely to see when that happens.
Yeah, we will too. Tim, thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.